Hey, this is Matthew Robbins, pastor and also the president of Vasalia Ministries. We're coming to you live here from the Grand Canyon, pretty close to the edge here, just to kind of give you an idea of what it's like and all the landscape. This is part of God's wonderful creation. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, His creation. Last year when we were here, we did some filming. We heard one of the guides say they had misinterpreted what had happened here. And just recently they discovered that this had been underwater. All of this had been underwater at one time or another. So just a little more confirmation. They don't want to give God credit, but we know who's in charge. And we just want to remind you that God's creation is His design, not man's. And so I was thinking about this, and the title of this message is, What Are You Looking At? You know, Paul talks about the beauty of nature and how it teaches us about God and reveals to us the heavens and all the creation, and the Old Testament as well, that these things themselves teach us that there's a God, that this stuff just didn't happen to come and do its own thing and wind up being created. God created all this, and He created it so that we could enjoy it. But He also created it so we would be reminded of who He is and what He's capable of. When you look at the creation, or when you look at the process of a child being formed in the womb, all these wonderful things that God has made available to us, then you can see how powerful He is and how good He is. The verse I want to read is Colossians 1:16. It says, For by Him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on the earth, visible and invisible. This is obviously visible here where we're at today. Whether thrones, dominions, principalities, or powers, all things were created through Him and for Him. And He is before all things, and in Him all things consist. So everything exists because of God. And so when you get out in nature, we're so dominated now by technology, and too many people spend their lives cooped up inside, and they don't realize the vastness of the life that's portrayed by the creation and all the things that God has for us. So we're sitting here above this canyon trying to remind everybody that God's got a big world out there that He put out there so that we could not only enjoy it, but also that we could be reminded of who He is and what He's done for us and what's available to us, and that we could reconnect with God in some ways because He's made all this for our pleasure and for us to enjoy, but more importantly, for us to see who He is. In verse 20 of Romans 1, it says, For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So the creation is an opportunity for the world to see who God is, and they are without an excuse because of that. We have no excuse when we see God's wonderful creation out here. So this portrays to us who He is. God made all of this, and He has a plan for our lives. And He said here, He says, these people, once they see what God has done, they are without an excuse, because they know they can see God with all the vastness of His creation. So when you think about to what extent God has went to show us who He is, we're all going to be without an excuse someday. So I want you to think about this. I want you to think about God's creation. I want you to think about how He designed it for you and I, not only to enjoy, but to see a beautiful picture of Him. This creation that you and I see, or could see every day if we would get out and see what God's done and not live our lives in a bubble surrounded with just technology. Technology has its place, but you know, someday technology is going to be done away with. And what's going to remain are the things that God created. He talks about in Peter how He's going to recreate the heavens and the earth at the end, and we're getting close to that end. And so as we see God's handiwork here, I can only imagine what His recreation do, where He's going to bring everything back together in a better way, because we're looking at a world that's been touched by sin, that's been impacted by sin, and it's still beautiful. There's still a lot of great things to enjoy, but God made this world for us to get a picture of Him, for us to know Him. And so not only are we without excuse for many other reasons, but creation itself has called every man and woman, we're now without excuse. There's no way this stuff came together on its own. There's a divine architect, a supreme creator. His name is Jehovah. We call Him God. He made all this so that we could enjoy it, but more than that, so that we would have a witness of who He is, a witness of His power, a witness of His creativity, a witness of His strength, a witness of His everlasting power. The earth is not going to be destroyed by man. So many people have been so overtaken by fear. This Bible is very clear, and you can go back to the Bible and see so many prophetic things fulfilled. You can see those in the earth today, things that God told us were going to happen over time that we've actually seen come to pass, and witnessed those things on the news. The end of this book tells us how God's going to end this thing. We do not end this. This earth does not belong to man. This earth belongs to God. We don't have the authority to destroy this place. It doesn't belong to us. God Himself is going to come back, send His Son back, going to take those who follow Him and believe in Him to heaven. Those who do not choose Christ and follow Him, they will wind up apart from God in what Jesus called hell. And then there'll be a new heaven and a new earth. God will redo this. He's going to renovate it with fire. That's how the earth's going to end. Oh, it's going to get hot. And I'm not here to deny the weather changing and whether the earth's getting hotter. I'm just here to tell you that's not how things end. The Creator is going to recreate everything. That's how it's going to end. It's not going to end. You don't have to fear the world being destroyed by man. He doesn't own it. The deed is registered in the courthouse of heaven under God's name. He's the one that has the jurisdiction here. So when you look at this great canyon behind me, I can only imagine what God has in store for those who love Him. The Apostle Paul said, "Eye hath not seen, ear hath not heard, neither has entered in the heart of man the things that God has in store for them who love Him." In 1 Corinthians chapter 2, before I close this short clip, verse 14, there's another verse I wanted to bring out to you. Chapter 2 and verse 14 says, "But the natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them because they are spiritually discerned." If you want to really understand God, you've got to put your faith out. You've got to step out by faith. You do that with lesser things. You know that? Every time you pull up to a stop sign, you count on your brakes. You think your brakes. You believe your brakes are going to work. And you live your life in so many ways by earthly faith. That's all I'm asking. Take a second look at God's Word. Take a second look at His creation and do it by faith and understand you didn't create yourself. You didn't come from a monkey. God made a monkey. God made a man. God made creation. He made everything, this canyon. How He chooses to make it is above our pay grade. We can't always figure God out. As David said, some things are too high for us to tame. But even as the guide here testified to the fact that all this was underwater at one time, I say to you, let God be true and everybody else be a liar. Take another look at creation. See what God's done and start understanding what He wants to do in your life as He recreates who you are in His Son, Jesus Christ. God bless you. We'll see you next time.